Hi, I'm Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business. For 10 years, I poured my heart and soul into our family's small tech company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a $50 million enterprise. But sometimes success breeds jealousy even among those who should be celebrating your achievements. I still remember the day everything started, when our family business was nothing more than a small computer repair shop in a strip mall. Dad had started it 20 years ago, and it was his pride and joy, even though it barely made enough to support our family. My sister, Emma, was always his favorite, the one who got straight A's and went to an elite business school. I was the quiet one, the one who stayed behind to help Dad while pursuing my computer science degree at a local college. "Sarah, you're wasting your potential here," Emma would say during her visits home from college. "You should aim higher." But I saw something in our little shop that others didn't: potential. While Emma was studying theoretical business models, I was learning real-world programming and spotting gaps in the market. During my final year of college, I developed our first proprietary software, a simple but effective tool for small businesses to manage their inventory. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was user-friendly and affordable. Dad was skeptical at first, but when local businesses started buying licenses, his attitude changed. "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo," he said, finally showing a glimmer of pride in my work. Those words meant everything to me then. If only I had known they were as temporary as morning dew. The business grew steadily under my guidance. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. While Emma was climbing the corporate ladder at a prestigious consulting firm in New York, I was building something real. Our little repair shop transformed into a software development company, and our client base expanded from local businesses to national corporations. Mom watched it all with quiet concern. "Don't work too hard, Sarah," she'd say, bringing me dinner at the office. "You need a life outside of work too." But I was driven by a vision, and maybe, deep down, by a desire to prove myself to my family. 5 years into our transformation, we hit our first $1 million in annual revenue. That's when Emma suddenly became interested in the family business again. She quit her job in New York and moved back home. "I think it's time I took my rightful place in the company," she announced at a family dinner. "With my business expertise, we could really take things to the next level." Dad beamed at her words. "That's wonderful, princess. We could use your professional touch around here." I sat there, fork suspended midair, trying to process what was happening. The company I had built from nearly nothing was being handed to my sister on a silver platter. But I swallowed my objections and tried to be a team player. Emma was appointed as co-CEO alongside me, despite having no experience in our industry. Dad said it would be good for the company image to have someone with her credentials at the helm. I focused on product development and operations while she handled marketing and investor relations. The next 5 years were a study in contrast. While I continued developing new software solutions and maintaining client relationships, Emma focused on creating a glamorous image for herself as the face of the company. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech and accepted awards for entrepreneurship, all of taking credit for innovations my team and I had created. Our revenue continued to grow, reaching $50 million annually, but so did the tension between us. Emma began excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without consulting me, and slowly pushing me to the sidelines of my own creation. Then came Dad's 60th birthday party. The day everything changed. The party was Emma's idea, of course. She rented out the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel and invited all our business associates. It was more of a networking event than a birthday celebration, but that was Emma's style. Everything had to serve a purpose. I arrived early to help with the preparations, wearing a simple black dress that Emma immediately criticized. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" she hissed. "These are important people coming tonight." I ignored her comment and focused on greeting guests as they arrived. The room filled quickly with business associates, clients, and family friends. Emma worked the room like a politician, while I stayed in the background, making sure everything ran smoothly. During dinner, Emma clanked her glass and stood up for a speech. I expected the usual, a touching tribute to Dad, maybe some memories from our childhood. Instead, she dropped a bomb that would shatter our family forever. "As we celebrate Dad's 60th birthday," she began, her voice carrying across the silent room, "I think it's time to announce some changes at Chen Technologies. The board has agreed that the company needs unified leadership to move forward. My heart stopped. Board meetings? What board meetings? For too long, we've been held back by outdated thinking and resistance to change. Emma continued, her eyes fixing on me. That's why, effective immediately, I will be taking over as sole CEO. It's time for certain elements that are no longer serving our growth to step aside. The room erupted in murmurs. I sat there, frozen, as Emma continued her character assassination, disguised as a corporate announcement. Some people, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, are better suited to technical roles rather than leadership. My sister Sarah has been adequate in maintaining our legacy systems, but to compete in today's market, we need vision. We need excellence. And frankly, Sarah, you're just not cut out for this level of business. I looked at Dad, expecting, hoping, he would stand up for me. Instead, he was nodding along with Emma's words, a proud smile on his face. Mom stared at her plate, her hands trembling slightly. The truth is, Emma continued, her voice rising, you're worthless in today's business world, Sarah. Your old-fashioned ideas and lack of proper business education have become a liability. It's time for you to step aside gracefully. The silence in the room was deafening. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, waiting for my response. I could feel the pity, the schadenfreude, the judgment. Everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, was being stripped away in front of everyone I knew. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Everyone expected a scene, perhaps tears, maybe a shouting match. Instead, I simply picked up my purse, walked to Dad's table, and placed a small wrapped package in front of him. Happy birthday, Dad, I said quietly. Then I walked out of the ballroom, head held high, leaving behind the whispers and stares. That night, as I sat in my home office surrounded by awards and patents that bore my name, I made a decision. Emma thought she had won, but she had forgotten one crucial detail, something that would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. As I powered up my laptop and began typing, a small smile played on my lips. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. After all, there's more than one way to run a successful business, and I had learned more in 10 years than Emma had learned in all her fancy business classes. The next morning would bring changes that none of them saw coming, changes that would make them realize exactly how worthless I really was. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the office early before anyone else and waited. At precisely 9 a.m., Emma strutted through the front doors with Dad beside her, both wearing triumphant smiles that were about to be wiped from their faces. Sarah? Emma's voice held a mix of surprise and annoyance. What are you doing here? I thought after last night, you'd have the dignity to stay home. I smiled, remembering the email I had sent at 3 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee of Chen Technologies. Just wrapping up some loose ends, sister dear. But since you're here, we should probably talk about the company's future. There's nothing to discuss, Dad interjected, his voice firm. Emma's in charge now. The board has already approved it. Ah yes, the board, I said, pulling out my tablet. Let's talk about that. You see, while Emma was busy planning parties and giving interviews, I was actually building this company. And there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten. I pulled up a document on the conference room's main screen. First, let me remind you that I own 51% of Chen Technologies shares. When we incorporated 10 years ago, Dad gave Emma and me equal shares of 25% each, keeping 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, Dad sold me 26% of the shares. Remember that day, Dad? You were too busy attending Emma's award ceremony to handle the negotiations yourself, so you signed the papers without reading them carefully. The color drained from both their faces. Emma's perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. That's impossible, she whispered. Dad would never. Oh, but he did. I continued, pulling up more documents. And that's not all. The core software that generates 80% of our revenue, it's not owned by Chen Technologies. It's owned by my separate company, Innovate Solutions LLC. Chen Technologies only has a licensing agreement which expires, I checked my watch, about 10 minutes ago. Dad collapsed into a chair, realization dawning on his face. The renewal papers. The ones you asked me to sign last week. The ones you were too busy to read because you were helping Emma plan the party. Yes, those papers. I decided not to submit them. Emma's face contorted with rage. You underhanded little. Careful, sister, I cut her off. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. While you were busy announcing my supposedly graceful exit last night, I was sending emails to our clients. You see, most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts. They signed with Chen Technologies because of me, my expertise, and my track record. Last night, I informed them of the leadership changes and my departure. I pulled up my email showing the dozens of responses that had already arrived. Would you like to know how many have already triggered their contract termination clauses? Or how many of our top developers, who by the way are actually employed by Innovative Solutions, have already accepted positions at my new venture? The room fell silent. Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Emma's perfect composure cracked as she frantically checked her phone. You can't do this, she stammered. The company you tried to steal from me? I finished for her. The one you thought you could just take over because you have an MBA and Dad's approval. That company ceased to exist the moment you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. I stood up, smoothing my dress. So here are your options. Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Chen Technologies becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the company's value dropped to zero overnight. Dad's face had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. And option 2, he asked weakly. Option 2, you both resign. I take full control of Chen Technologies. You keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends but having no say in operations. Emma gets a nice severance package and glowing references for her next job, somewhere far away from here. Emma's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You planned this all along, didn't you? You've just been waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, Emma. I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter and sister while you both took me for granted. I built this company from nothing while you collected accolades for my work. I only planned this. I checked my watch again, about 12 hours ago, after you called me worthless in front of everyone we know. My phone buzzed, another client termination notice. Time's running out. What's it going to be? The next hour was a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I sat alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I had built was now truly mine, but the victory felt hollow. Family relationships lay in ruins around me, trust shattered like dropped crystal. Mom came to see me that evening, her eyes red from crying. Did it have to end this way? She asked softly. They gave me no choice, I replied, my voice gentle but firm. They would have taken everything I built and discarded me without a second thought. She nodded slowly, understanding but sad. What happens now? I showed her the plans I had already drawn up, expansions, new product lines, innovations I had been holding back. Now I built something even bigger, but this time, I'd do it without having to carry people who see me as worthless. Over the next year, Chen Technologies, under my sole leadership, tripled in value. Emma found a job with a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled but hopefully wiser. Dad retired, finally understanding that his golden child had nearly destroyed his legacy. We see each other at holidays, maintaining a polite distance that masks the wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. But then I remember that night at the birthday party, the look of disdain on Emma's face. The way Dad nodded along with her cruel words. In business and in family, respect is earned, not given. They learned that lesson too late. As for me, I learned that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones dismissed as worthless, are the ones you should watch out for, because we're the ones who know how to build something from nothing and how to take it all back when others try to steal it. My story spread through business circles, a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. These days, when I attend industry events, I often catch whispers. That's Sarah Chen, the one who. They never finish the sentence, but they don't have to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Emma's business school's graduation ceremony. The topic? Hidden Strengths, the Power of Underestimated Leaders. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership, but more importantly, I've found peace with my decisions. Sometimes the strongest message you can send is simply proving people wrong. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I write this from my office overlooking the city, I'm reminded of something my mother once told me. Success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved past the need for revenge now. These days, I focus on building something meaningful, something that will outlast all the petty jealousies and family dramas. I still keep that wrapped birthday present I never gave Dad. A photo album of the company's journey from that tiny repair shop to what it is today. Maybe someday when the wounds have healed enough, I'll finally give it to him. Until then, it serves as a reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others underestimate about us.
The day I lost everything was deceptively bright and sunny. Standing in my childhood home's driveway with 2 hastily packed suitcases, I watched my family count my life savings, $175,000 that I'd spent 5 years carefully building. Thanks for the contribution, Olivia. My brother Marcus smirked, shuffling the bank statements in his hands. We really needed this for the new house. I was 28, and in the span of one morning, I'd gone from having a secure future to being completely broke. Not because I'd made bad investments or gotten into debt, but because my own family had manipulated me into lending them everything I had. You can't just throw me out, I said, my voice shaking. That money was for my future. My mother appeared in the doorway, her expression cold. Your future? What future? You're just a nobody working a boring office job. Marcus and Lisa actually have plans. They need a proper family home. Lisa, my sister, stood beside her, already scrolling through luxury real estate listings on her phone. They had it all planned out, use my savings as a down payment for their dream house in the exclusive Oakwood Heights neighborhood. A 6-bedroom mansion with a pool and tennis court. You'll get it back eventually, Lisa said dismissively. Once Marcus's business takes off. Marcus's business. A series of failed startups that had already drained our parents' retirement fund. But they still believed in him, their golden child who could do no wrong. That was everything I had, I whispered, still unable to believe this was happening. Oh, stop being dramatic, my father called from inside. Family helps family. This is a real investment opportunity. Better than letting that money sit in your account doing nothing. Family helps family. That had always been their excuse when they needed something from me. When Marcus needed bail money after his DUI. When Lisa maxed out her credit cards. When Mom and Dad faced foreclosure on their house. Each time I'd helped, believing they'd change, believing they'd see my value. At least let me stay until I find a place, I pleaded, looking at the home I'd grown up in. No room, Marcus shrugged. We need your bedroom for planning the renovation of our new house. Can't have your negative energy around anyway. You'll probably jinx the whole thing with your pessimism. Worthless, my mother muttered, turning away. Always have been. Can't even be happy for your siblings' success. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the driveway. Through the window, I could see them gathered around the dining room table, probably already picking out marble countertops and designer fixtures for their dream home. What they didn't know was that I wasn't quite as worthless as they thought. For the past 3 years, while working my boring office job, I'd been quietly building something on the side. Morgan Real Estate Solutions, a company that specialized in luxury property investments and development. I operated through shell corporations and investment trusts, keeping my name hidden from public records. My boring job? I was actually a senior investment analyst at one of the largest banks in the city. The modest apartment I lived in? A deliberate choice to save money and invest in my business. The nothing my money had been doing? Growing into a real estate empire worth 10 times what they'd just stolen from me. Standing there in the driveway watching my family celebrate their theft of my savings, I made a decision. They wanted to buy their dream house? Fine. But they were about to learn that karma sometimes comes with a properly notarized deed. I pulled out my phone and called my assistant, Catherine. What's the status on the Oakwood Heights properties? I asked, walking to my car. We own 60% of the neighborhood through various subsidiaries, Catherine replied. Including that mansion the Hendersons just listed, the one with the pool and tennis court. I smiled, starting my engine. Perfect. Have our realtor contact my family. Let them think they found their dream home. And the price. Make it just slightly more than what they just stole from me. Let them think they can afford it. I drove to my real office, the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise, and began setting my plan in motion. The Hendersons' mansion was already mine, bought through one of my shell companies last week. Now it would become the stage for a lesson my family desperately needed to learn. Should I prepare the usual paperwork? Catherine asked, following me into my office. No, I said, looking out over the city I'd quietly come to own a significant piece of. This time we're going to do something different. Let them tour the house, fall in love with it, think it's within their reach. Then they'll learn who really owns not just that house, but half their precious Oakwood Heights. I spent the next week watching from afar as my family fell into my trap. They toured the mansion, took photos, started making plans. Marcus already bragged to his friends about his new tennis court. Lisa posted pictures on social media, hashtagging #newhome and #blessed. My mother called all her friends, gushing about how her successful children were moving up in the world. My father strutted around like he'd personally earned every square foot of that mansion. Not once did they mention where the down payment had come from. Not once did they wonder how I was doing, where I was staying, whether I had anything left to live on. But that was okay. Sometimes the best revenge doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from letting people build their dreams on foundations they don't own. In my real office, I reviewed the final pieces of my plan. The property deed, the ownership documents, the corporate records that would reveal exactly who held the real power in Oakwood Heights. Everything was ready. The Henderson mansion showing is scheduled for tomorrow, Catherine informed me. Your family plans to make an offer immediately after. I nodded, picking up a business card from my desk. Simple, elegant, with just my name and title. Olivia Morgan, CEO, Morgan Real Estate Solutions. Make sure our realtor gives them this after they've fallen completely in love with the house, I instructed. Let them discover exactly who they're dealing with. That night, I drove past my old home, watching through the windows as my family celebrated their imagined victory. They were probably picking out furniture, planning parties, imagining a life they thought my money had bought them. Tomorrow they would learn that the child they'd called worthless had built something far bigger than their dreams. Tomorrow they would discover that sometimes the biggest power lies in being underestimated. I parked across the street, remembering all the times they'd dismissed me, mocked my careful saving, called me boring and worthless. Tomorrow they would learn what boring had built. My phone buzzed. Another excited social media post from Lisa about their soon-to-be new home. I smiled, thinking about how quickly celebration can turn to shock when you discover that the person you threw away actually holds the keys to your dreams. Sometimes the best lessons come with a hefty price tag and a perfectly timed business card. Tomorrow would be quite educational. The morning of the final house showing dawned clear and crisp. I sat in my downtown office, watching the security feed from the Henderson mansion on my laptop. Right on schedule, my family's Mercedes pulled up to the wrought iron gates. They're here, Catherine announced, setting a coffee on my desk. Marcus is wearing his power suit, the one he bought for failed startup pitch number 3. I smiled, remembering how that particular venture had cost our parents their vacation fund. And the others? Lisa's already taking selfies by the fountain. Your mother's practically glowing, and your father's trying to look like he inspects multi-million-dollar properties every day. The realtor I'd chosen, Jessica Chin, greeted them at the door. She'd been briefed extensively on her role in today's performance. Welcome to 47 Oakwood Heights, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the security feed. This 8,000-square-foot estate features 6 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, and every luxury amenity you could imagine. I watched as my family followed her through the grand entrance, their eyes wide with naked desire. Lisa immediately started planning her Instagram photos. Marcus headed straight for the home office, probably imagining himself playing businessman there. The gourmet kitchen features imported Italian marble, Jessica continued, and the wine cellar can hold over 1,000 bottles. Perfect for our summer galas, my mother gushed, already planning parties she couldn't afford. The pool house includes a full gym and spa, Jessica added, leading them through the back doors. And of course, there's the tennis court Mr. Morgan was interested in. I can already see myself practicing my serve, Marcus boasted, though he'd never played tennis in his life. For the next hour, they toured every inch of the property, making grand plans and dropping hints about their supposed wealth. Not once did they mention where their down payment had come from, their sister's stolen life savings. "Now," Jessica said finally, gathering them in the grand living room, "let's discuss the offer process. Given the unique nature of this property, the owner has some specific requirements." "Whatever they want," my father declared confidently. "Money is no object." I almost laughed at that. The money he was so casually dismissing was my money. Everything I'd saved while they'd mocked my frugal lifestyle and careful planning. "Excellent," Jessica smiled, reaching into her portfolio. "The owner actually left some information for you." She handed each of them a business card. Simple, elegant, with my name and title clearly printed. Olivia Morgan, CEO, Morgan Real Estate Solutions. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched on my screen as the blood drained from their faces. This must be a mistake," Marcus stammered, turning the card over as if expecting to find different information on the back. "No mistake," Jessica replied calmly. "Ms. Morgan owns this property through one of her companies. In fact, she owns quite a bit of Oakwood Heights." "Olivia." Lisa's voice had lost its usual smug tone. "Our Olivia?" "The very same," Jessica confirmed. "She thought you might be interested in this property, given that you're using her life savings for the down payment." My mother sank onto one of the imported Italian leather sofas, her legs seemingly unable to hold her up. "But she's nobody. She works in some boring office job." "Actually," Jessica corrected, "she's one of the most successful real estate developers in the city. Morgan Real Estate Solutions owns properties worth over $500 million. This house is just one small part of her portfolio." My father's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "Where is she? We demand to speak with her." Right on cue, the grand double doors opened. I walked in, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that cost more than Marcus's car. The looks on their faces were priceless: shock, disbelief, and the slow dawning of realization. "Hello, family," I said quietly. "I believe you're in my house." "Olivia," Marcus started, trying to regain his composure. "We can explain about the money dash." "Pie money," I corrected him. "The $175,000 you stole from me right before throwing me out of my childhood home." "We didn't steal it," Lisa protested weakly. "It was a loan for our dream house." "This dream house?" I gestured around the magnificent room. "The one I bought last month through one of my shell companies?" My mother stood up, attempting to switch to manipulation mode. "Darling, if we'd known you were so successful, we would never have dash." "Never have what?" I cut her off. "Never have taken everything I had? Never have called me worthless? Never have thrown me out without caring where I'd go?" The silence was deafening. "Let me show you something," I continued, pulling out my tablet. With a few taps, I brought up a map of Oakwood Heights on the room's large display screen. "The properties in red? Those belong to Morgan Real Estate Solutions. As you can see, that's about 60% of the neighborhood." They stared at the screen, watching as property after property lit up in red, creating a web of ownership throughout their desired prestigious neighborhood. "You've been playing us," Marcus accused, his voice shaking. "No," I corrected him. "I've been teaching you a lesson about consequences, about what happens when you underestimate people, about karma." "So what now?" my father demanded. "You're going to hold this over us? Make us beg?" I laughed softly. "I don't want anything from you. I built all of this while you were busy mocking my boring job and worthless life. I don't need your approval anymore." "Then why?" Lisa asked. "Why let us tour the house? Why this whole show?" "Because you needed to learn that success isn't about taking from others. It's about building something real, something legitimate." I moved toward the door. "You wanted this house so badly you were willing to steal from your own daughter. Now you know that daughter owns not just this house, but half the neighborhood you dreamed of living in. We're still family." My mother tried one last time. "Surely we can work something out?" "Family." I turned back to them. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't throw their children out on the street. Family doesn't call their own daughter worthless." I nodded to Jessica, who began gathering her things. "The showing is over. I trust you can find your way out." "Wait," Marcus called as I reached the door. What about our dream home? I smiled. Oh, this house isn't for sale. But I hear there's a lovely development on the other side of town, something more in your actual price range. The aftermath was exactly what I expected. Word spread quickly through their social circle that the daughter they'd dismissed as a nobody was actually one of the city's most successful real estate developers. Their friends stopped returning their calls after learning how they'd treated me. Their social standing crumbled. Marcus's latest business venture failed spectacularly when potential investors learned about his history of stealing from family. Lisa's social media followers dropped off when the truth about her dream house posts came out. My parents found themselves increasingly isolated in their social circles. But revenge wasn't my goal. A month after the showing, I received an unexpected visitor at my office, my father looking older and more humble than I'd ever seen him. I was wrong, he said simply. We were all wrong. Not just about your success but about who you are as a person. I let him talk, watching as years of arrogance and entitlement seemed to melt away. The money, he continued, placing a check on my desk. It's all there with interest. We sold some things, took out loans. It's not about buying the house anymore. It's about trying to fix what we broke. I looked at the check, then back at him. It was never about the money, Dad. I know that now, he replied quietly. It was about respect. About seeing value in people beyond what they can give you. About being real family. Over the next year things changed. Not dramatically, not instantly, but gradually. Marcus gave up his dreams of instant startup success and went back to school for business administration. Lisa stopped chasing social media fame and started working with a nonprofit housing organization. My mother, perhaps the most surprisingly, asked to learn about real estate development. Not to get involved with my company, but to understand what I'd built while they weren't looking. Today, Morgan Real Estate Solutions continues to grow, but with a different mission. We develop affordable housing alongside luxury properties, creating mixed-income communities that benefit everyone. The Henderson Mansion? I turned it into a community center for underprivileged kids interested in business and real estate. Last week, I received a message from Marcus. He just finished his first semester of business school and wanted to share his grades. Not to ask for anything, just to show me he was trying to change. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing people that the person they underestimated never needed their approval in the first place. I kept their business cards from that day at the mansion. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And that's worth more than any dream house. I stood outside the grand entrance of the Westbrook Country Club, watching luxury cars pull up one after another. Mercedes, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, each vehicle carrying another member of my supposedly successful family to our annual reunion. I deliberately arrived by Uber, playing into their expectations one last time. I'm Olivia Winters, though in the business world, I'm known as Olivia Blake, my mother's maiden name, carefully chosen to keep my true identity hidden from my status-obsessed relatives. At 34, I'm the CEO of Blake Industries, a conglomerate that had just quietly acquired controlling interest in the Winters family company. Not that they knew that yet. Look who finally made it, my cousin Ethan called out as I climbed the club's marble steps. Did the bus run late? I smiled, adjusting my simple black dress Chanel, though they'd assume it was off the rack. Traffic was terrible. You should really think about getting a car, Aunt Martha chimed in, air-kissing my cheek. Though I suppose on your salary. She let the words trail off, her diamond bracelets catching the afternoon light. Those same bracelets she'd been wearing for the past 5 years, pawning and reclaiming them depending on her gambling debts. Not that anyone in the family acknowledged that. Inside, the country club's ballroom was a scene of calculated opulence. Crystal chandeliers, silk tablecloths, and dozens of Winters family members pretending they could afford it all. If they only knew their membership fees were being paid by one of my shell companies. I'd bought the club 6 months ago. Olivia, darling. My mother's voice carried across the room, sharp with barely concealed disappointment. We weren't sure you'd make it. Given your circumstances. My circumstances. I suppressed a laugh, thinking of the meeting I'd left earlier, finalizing the paperwork that would give me control of Winters International, the company my Uncle George had been running into the ground for the past decade. I wouldn't miss it, Mom. I kissed her cheek, catching the slight frown as she noted my lack of jewelry. She was wearing her usual collection of flashy pieces, all fake since she'd sold the real ones years ago. "Well, find your seat," she gestured vaguely toward the back tables. Though we had to adjust the seating chart. "Your cousin Marcus just made junior partner at his firm, so naturally," I echoed, already knowing I'd be seated as far from the successful family members as possible. Marcus caught my eye from his place of honor near Uncle George, smirking as he raised his champagne glass. He had no idea that his law firm's biggest client, Blake Industries, was about to terminate their contract. I made my way to my assigned table, the furthest from the main action. My table mates were the other family disappointments: cousin Sarah, who'd chosen teaching over banking, Uncle Paul, who'd never quite fit the Winters mold, and two distant relatives nobody quite remembered. "Don't let them get to you," Sarah whispered as I sat down. "They're all living on credit anyway." She had no idea how right she was. My financial analyst had given me detailed reports on every family member's finances. The picture wasn't pretty: mortgages underwater, credit cards maxed out, investment accounts drained. All while they kept up appearances at any cost. "So, Olivia," Uncle George's voice boomed from the head table, "still working at that little investment firm?" The room quieted, everyone ready for their annual entertainment, mocking the family member who hadn't made it. "Something like that," I replied, taking a sip of water. The little investment firm was actually my first acquisition, the stepping stone I'd used to build Blake Industries into a powerhouse. "You know," Marcus called out, unable to resist, "my firm is always looking for back-office staff. If you want a real job." Laughter rippled through the room. I checked my watch, right on schedule. "Tell us about your new position, Marcus," Aunt Martha urged. "Junior partner at 35. Such an achievement." I tuned out his response, thinking about how this all began. 10 years ago, I had indeed started at a small investment firm, learning the business from the ground up while my family mocked my career choice. Investment analyst? Uncle George had sneered at every reunion. Couldn't hack it in real business, huh? But while they were laughing, I was watching. Building. I saw opportunities they missed, patterns they ignored. When the chance came to buy my first company, I was ready. One company became 2, then 10, then 50. I reinvested everything, living modestly while my cousins flaunted their leased luxury cars and designer clothes. I worked silently while my uncles bragged about their failing businesses and my aunts compared fake jewelry. Every family reunion became an exercise in enduring their condescension. "Still taking public transportation?" Marcus would ask, adjusting his fake Rolex. "You know, success leaves clues, Olivia. The investment world is so unstable," Mom would add. "You should have married that dentist I introduced you to." Even last year, when I'd closed a billion-dollar merger, they'd been more interested in Uncle George's latest revolutionary business strategy. The same strategy that had driven Winters International to the brink of bankruptcy. My phone buzzed quietly, a message from my chief operating officer. "All paperwork ready. Winters International shares secured. Proceed with announcement." I typed back a quick response. "Hold until my signal. Enjoying the show." "Speaking of business," Uncle George was saying, his voice carrying that forced confidence I'd come to recognize, "Winters International just had our best quarter yet. The Asian expansion is proceeding exactly as planned." I bit back a smile. The Asian expansion was a disaster, hemorrhaging money at a rate that would have bankrupted the company in months if I hadn't stepped in. My team had been quietly buying up shares through various shell companies for the past year, preparing for this moment. "That's wonderful, Uncle George," I said, just loud enough to carry. "Though I heard there were some issues with the Singapore office?" He froze, wine glass halfway to his lips. "Issues? What issues?" "Oh, just some rumors in the investment community. I'm sure it's nothing." Marcus jumped in, ever eager to show off his supposed business acumen. "The Singapore expansion is revolutionary. I've seen the projections myself." "Projections can be misleading," I offered mildly. "What would you know about it?" Aunt Martha sniffed. "It's not like you're involved in major business dealings." Before I could respond, the ballroom doors opened. My driver, Thomas, entered in his immaculate uniform, carrying a leather portfolio. "Ms. Blake," he announced formally, using my business name, "the acquisition papers are ready for your review." The room fell silent. Blake. Uncle George whispered. As in Blake Industries? I stood up, smoothing my dress. Yes, Uncle George. Exactly like that. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. You could have heard a counterfeit diamond drop. I don't understand, Marcus finally stammered. You're Olivia Blake? The Olivia Blake. Among other things, I said, taking the portfolio from Thomas. Though you all seem to prefer the one who takes the bus. Uncle George's face had gone from red to white to a concerning shade of purple. This is impossible. Blake Industries is worth $12 billion at last valuation, I finished for him. Though after today's acquisition, that number will be significantly higher. Acquisition. Aunt Martha's voice rose to a near shriek. What acquisition? I opened the portfolio, removing a stack of documents. Winters International, of course. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Blake Industries owns 51% of the voting shares. The chaos that erupted was exactly what I'd expected from a family that had always valued appearance over substance. You can't do this. Uncle George surged to his feet, his carefully maintained facade cracking. The board would never approve. The board already has, I interrupted smoothly. In fact, they were quite eager to accept our offer once they saw the true state of the company's finances. Marcus pushed his way forward, lawyer mode engaged. This is clearly a hostile takeover. My firm will. Your firm. I smiled. You mean Anderson and Price? I'm afraid they won't be handling any more Winters International business. Or Blake Industries business for that matter. Your services are no longer required. His face drained of color as the implications sank in. The prestigious law firm he'd been bragging about all afternoon had just lost its two biggest clients. But how? Mom whispered, her hands clutching her fake pearls. You're just what, Mother? Just an investment analyst? Just someone who takes public transportation? Just the family disappointment you seated at the back of every reunion? The room had gone deathly quiet, everyone finally paying attention to the relative they'd dismissed for so long. While you were all busy comparing luxury cars and vacation homes, I continued, my voice carrying clearly in the silence, I was building something real. While you were living on credit and pretending to be wealthy, I was actually creating wealth. This is spite, Aunt Martha accused, her bracelets jingling as she pointed a trembling finger. Pure revenge for how we treated you. Revenge? I laughed. No, Aunt Martha. This is business. Winters International is a failing company being run into the ground by incompetent management. As a major shareholder, I have a responsibility to protect my investment. Major shareholder? Uncle George's voice cracked. How long have you been planning this? Planning? I've been watching this company deteriorate for years. The failed expansions, the mismanaged assets, the desperate attempts to hide the true financial situation. I pulled out more documents. Would you like to see the real numbers, Uncle George? The ones you've been hiding from the board. He collapsed back into his chair, the fight draining out of him. As for how long, I continued, I've been buying shares through various shell companies since you announced the Singapore expansion. An expansion, I might add, that has lost over $100 million in 6 months. Marcus, still trying to salvage something, stepped forward. The family will fight this. We have rights. You have nothing, I cut him off. Check your own stock holdings, cousin. That margin call you've been avoiding? It just came due. His face went pale. Like many family members, he'd borrowed heavily against his Winters International shares, counting on the stock price to keep rising. But with the company's true financial state about to become public, those shares were about to become nearly worthless. Now, I said, sitting down at the head table, Uncle George's usual seat. Shall we discuss the future of Winters International? What are you going to do? Mom asked, her voice small. First, there will be a complete restructuring. New board, new management team. Uncle George, you'll be announcing your retirement. Effective immediately. You can't force me out, he protested weakly. I built this company. Grandfather built this company, I corrected him. You inherited it and nearly destroyed it. Would you like me to show everyone the real books? The hidden debts? The personal expenses you've been charging to company accounts? He fell silent. As for the rest of you, I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of various family members. Those cushy do-nothing jobs you've been enjoying? Those end today. Winters International will now be run on merit, not family connections. But we're family, Aunt Martha pleaded. Family. I stood up, my voice sharp. Was it family when you mocked my career choices? When you seated me at the back of every gathering? When you dismissed my achievements because they didn't come with fancy cars and designer labels? Silence. Well, guess what? While you were all playing at being successful, I actually became successful. While you were accumulating debt, I was accumulating companies. While you were faking wealth, I was building it. I nodded to Thomas, who began distributing envelopes. These are your new employment contracts. For those of you who are actually qualified to keep your positions. The rest of you will find very generous severance packages. I suggest you take them. And if we refuse? Marcus challenged, though his voice shook. Then you can explain to the SEC why you've been insider trading with company information. I smiled as his face went white. Oh yes, cousin. I know about those convenient stock trades just before major company announcements. Did you really think nobody would notice? Mom stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Olivia, please. We're your family. No, mother. You're shareholders in a company I now control. And not very valuable shareholders, given how many of you have leveraged your stock holdings to maintain your lifestyles. I picked up my phone as it buzzed with another message. Ah, perfect timing. The press release about the acquisition is going out now. I suggest you all check your stock portfolios. The market's reaction should be interesting. Within minutes, phones around the room began buzzing as the news spread. Winters International stock was plummeting as the company's true financial state became public. At the same time, Blake Industries stock was soaring on news of the acquisition and restructuring plan. By the way, I added almost as an afterthought, this country club? I own it too. Have for months. Consider your memberships revoked. The next hour was chaos. Some family members tried to negotiate, others threatened legal action, a few broke down in tears. I watched it all with calm detachment, signing documents and taking calls from my executive team. One more thing, I announced as the reality of their situation finally sank in. Those annual family reunions? They'll now be held in the Blake Industries boardroom, though I suspect attendance will be significantly lower. As I prepared to leave, Mom made one last attempt. We didn't know, she whispered. All this time we didn't know who you really were. That's the point, Mother. You never bothered to find out. You were too busy counting fake wealth to notice real success. I gathered my things, nodding to Thomas. My car is waiting. Your car? Aunt Martha asked weakly. Yes, the Rolls-Royce out front. One of them anyway. Though I still prefer taking an Uber sometimes. It keeps me grounded. The drive home to my penthouse was peaceful. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members, alternating between threats and pleas. But I ignored them all. The next morning, I watched from my office as the business news exploded with headlines about the Blake Industries takeover of Winters International. The stock market reacted exactly as I'd predicted. My company's value increased by another $1 billion before lunch. Over the next few weeks, the changes at Winters International were swift and dramatic. Uncle George retired to avoid public embarrassment. Marcus's law firm lost half its clients once their mishandling of Winters' business became known. Various family members found their credit lines suddenly restricted as their stock holdings lost value. At Christmas, they tried to arrange a family meeting to discuss the situation. I declined, sending instead a detailed report of the company's transformation under new management and a reminder about the next shareholders' meeting. The family's calling it your revenge, my CFO mentioned during our year-end review. Taking over their company, exposing their failures. It's not revenge, I corrected him, signing off on another acquisition. It's just good business. The fact that it exposed their decades of pretense is just a bonus. Some might call it cruel, using my success to teach my family a lesson. But as I sat in my office watching my empire grow while theirs crumbled, I couldn't help but appreciate the irony. They mocked me for taking the bus. Now they can't afford their car payments. They dismissed my career. Now they work for my company, those who qualify. The Anderson and Mitchell lobby hadn't changed in 5 years. Same pretentious marble floors, same overpriced art installations, Same arrogant faces strutting through the revolving doors. Only this time I wasn't here to beg for my job back, like they'd all predicted. I was here to decide their fate. Miss Carter. The receptionist's eyes widened in recognition. I didn't know you were expected. I'm not, I smiled, adjusting my Chanel suit, the kind of outfit I could never afford when I worked here. But I'm sure Mr. Mitchell will want to see me. 5 years ago, I'd walked out of this building in tears, their laughter echoing behind me. Today I was walking in as the CEO of Nova Industries, the company that was about to determine whether Anderson and Mitchell survived or crumbled. Victoria. James Mitchell's voice boomed across the lobby. What an unexpected pleasure. I turned to face my former boss, the man who'd made my life hell for 3 years. He looked older now, stress lines etched deeper around his eyes. The firm's recent troubles had clearly taken their toll. James, I kept my voice professionally neutral. I believe we have some business to discuss. His smile faltered slightly. Business? I wasn't aware of any. Nova Industries now owns 60% of your outstanding debt, I interrupted smoothly. As of this morning, we also acquired controlling interest in your largest client's portfolio. Should we discuss this in your office? The color drained from his face. 5 years ago he'd stood in that same spot and told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life by leaving. You'll never survive without us, he'd sneered. No one succeeds in this business without connections, without the Anderson and Mitchell name behind them. I'd believed him then. Fresh out of business school, 3 years of working 100-hour weeks as an investment analyst, only to be passed over for promotion in favor of the CEO's nephew. When I questioned the decision, they'd made my life unbearable. You should be grateful we gave you a chance, Mitchell had said. A girl from your background, no family connections, no private school pedigree. You'll come crawling back within a year. Instead I'd walked out. No backup plan, no safety net, just a determination to prove them wrong. The elevator ride to his office was silent. Mitchell kept shooting nervous glances at me, probably trying to calculate how his star analyst had become the person who held his company's fate in her hands. His corner office still had that ridiculous view of the city. I'd spent countless nights there, preparing reports that he'd present as his own work, watching the sunset while he took credit for my strategies. So, he settled behind his massive desk, trying to project confidence. To what do we owe this visit? I placed my briefcase on his desk, taking my time opening it. The debt acquisition was just the beginning, James. Nova Industries has been systematically purchasing controlling interests in your key client relationships. That's impossible, he sputtered. Our client relationships are rock solid. We've had some of these accounts for decades. Had, I corrected him, sliding a folder across his desk. Past tense. Open it. His hands trembled slightly as he read the documents. Each page detailed another piece of his empire that now belonged to me. This is some kind of revenge plot, he managed finally. I laughed. Revenge? James, revenge would be watching your company collapse. This is business. Pure, simple business. The kind you never thought I could understand. What do you want? A meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Full board attendance required. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Oh, and make sure Daniel attends. Daniel Mitchell. The nephew who'd taken the promotion that should have been mine. Last I'd heard, he'd nearly lost 3 major accounts with his incompetence. Daniel. But he's not. 9 a.m., I repeated firmly. Everyone's future at this firm depends on it. I walked out of his office without looking back, but I could feel the panic radiating from him. In the elevator, I allowed myself a small smile. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years is a long time to build something. While they'd been coasting on their reputation, relying on old money and older connections, I'd been creating a new kind of investment firm. Nova Industries wasn't built on family names or country club memberships. We succeeded because we were better, smarter, and hungrier than firms like Anderson and Mitchell. My phone buzzed, a text from my assistant. They're already calling emergency board meetings. Lots of panic at A&M. Good. Let them panic. Let them spend the night wondering how the analyst they'd dismissed had become the person who controlled their fate. I'd spent the first year after leaving in a tiny apartment, living on savings while I developed my investment strategy. No fancy office, no expense account, just pure determination and a laptop. The breakthrough came when I spotted a pattern in emerging market derivatives that everyone else had missed. While old-school firms like A&M were still playing by last century's rules, I was building algorithms to predict market shifts before they happened. My first independent investment tripled in 6 months. The second one quadrupled. By year 2, I had enough seed money to start Nova Industries. They'd laughed when I left. "What are you going to do?" Mitchell had mocked. "Start your own firm? Without our connections, our resources." Exactly that. I hired young, hungry analysts like I had been, brilliant minds overlooked by the old boys network. We developed proprietary trading systems that made traditional methods obsolete. Most importantly, we watched firms like Anderson and Mitchell slowly lose their edge. When A&M started having liquidity problems last year, I was ready. Every piece of debt they tried to restructure, every client relationship they took for granted, Nova Industries was there quietly acquiring control. Now, sitting in my car outside their building, I looked at the briefcase containing tomorrow's presentation. Everything was there. The proof of their mismanagement, the details of accounts they'd neglected, and most importantly, my proposal for their future. They thought I was coming back to destroy them. But I had something much better in mind. My phone buzzed again, Mitchell's number. I let it go to voicemail. Let him sweat tonight just like I had sweated through countless nights working on his reports. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Tomorrow they'd learn what real business acumen looks like. And it wouldn't be wearing an old-school tie. 9 a.m. sharp. I walked into Anderson and Mitchell's main conference room. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The entire board sat around the massive table, 15 men and 2 women, all wearing expressions ranging from anxiety to outright hostility. James Mitchell occupied his usual seat at the head of the table. Daniel, his nephew, slouched in a corner, trying to look bored but failing to hide his nervousness. "Thank you all for coming," I began, setting up my laptop. "I'm sure you're wondering why I called this meeting. If this is some kind of vendetta," one of the board members started. "This is business," I cut him off. "Though I understand why you might be confused about the difference." My assistant Emma distributed folders to everyone present. The room fell silent as they opened them. "As you can see," I continued, "Nova Industries now controls not only the majority of your debt but also 60% of your client relationships. Your last quarter showed a 40% decline in revenue. Your stock has dropped 65% in the past year." Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. "Markets have been volatile." "No," I interrupted again. "Markets have been evolving. You just failed to notice because you were too busy protecting your old ways of doing business." I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. It showed a comparison between A&M's traditional investment approach and Nova's algorithm-based strategy. While you were relying on golf course handshakes and family connections, we were developing predictive models that have consistently outperformed the market by 28%. Daniel snorted. "Computer programs can't replace real relationships." I smiled. "Really? Let's look at your personal performance record." The next slide detailed Daniel's catastrophic handling of key accounts, millions in losses, clients who jumped ship to more innovative firms, strategies that belonged in the last century. "This," I pointed to his worst failure, "cost your firm $50 million. The position I recommended before leaving, the one you dismissed as too risky, would have made you $180 million. The board members were now glaring at Daniel, who had suddenly lost his smug expression. "But today isn't about pointing out your failures," I continued. "It's about offering you a choice." I clicked to the next slide. The room collectively gasped. Option 1. Nova Industries calls in all your outstanding debt immediately. Your firm collapses, your clients officially transfer to us, and you all update your LinkedIn profiles. Mitchell's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "You can't." Option 2. I spoke over him. Nova acquires Anderson and Mitchell outright. We modernize your operations, retrain your staff, and bring you into the 21st century. "You want to buy us?" One of the women board members leaned forward. "What would that mean for current management?" "Complete restructuring. Merit-based promotions, not family connections. Integration with our technology platforms. And yes, significant leadership changes." I met Mitchell's eyes directly. Starting at the top. The room erupted in chaos. Board members arguing amongst themselves, Mitchell trying to shout over everyone, Daniel looking like he might be sick. I let them argue for exactly 1 minute before raising my hand. You have until noon to decide. Though I should mention, 3 of your remaining major clients are already in talks to move their accounts to Nova. Once they do, option 1 becomes your only choice. A senior board member, William Parks, cleared his throat. Could we see more details about your technological infrastructure? I nodded to Emma, who distributed more folders. Our returns speak for themselves. While you were teaching Daniel here how to order expensive wine at client dinners, we were revolutionizing investment strategy. This is ridiculous, Mitchell burst out. We're Anderson and Mitchell. We've been in business for 70 years. You can't just walk in here and... I already have, I cut him off. Would you like to see the legal documents? The client transfer agreements? The debt certificates? Or should we talk about why your firm is failing while mine is thriving? Silence fell over the room. You know what the real irony is? I continued, walking slowly around the table. If you had promoted me 5 years ago, if you had seen past your biases and actually looked at performance, you might not be in this position today. We gave you opportunities, Mitchell protested weakly. No, I corrected him. You gave me a desk and expected gratitude. Every opportunity one got, I earned. And when I earned the biggest one, the promotion that went to your nephew instead, you showed me exactly what kind of firm this was. I stopped behind Daniel's chair. How's that working out for everyone? The board members were now openly glaring at Mitchell and his nephew. Decades of old-school management had finally caught up with them. Noon, I repeated, gathering my things. Though given the client meetings I have scheduled for 10:30, I'd decide sooner. Wait, Parks called as I reached the door. What happens to the people who weren't part of what happened to you? I turned back. Talent is talent. Nova Industries rewards performance, not pedigree. Those who can adapt will thrive. Those who can't. I glanced at Daniel, will find other opportunities. I left them to their deliberations, but I already knew what they would decide. The numbers didn't lie. Without Nova's intervention, A&M would collapse within months. By 11 a.m. Parks called. The board had voted overwhelmingly to accept acquisition. Mitchell and Daniel had abstained, but it didn't matter. Smart choice, I told him. The transition team will arrive tomorrow. And William, clear out the corner office. I'll need it when I come to oversee the restructuring. Mitchell's office. The same one where he told me I'd never succeed without them. The next morning, I watched from my car as Mitchell carried a box of personal items out of the building. Daniel followed shortly after, his designer suit wrinkled, his arrogance finally deflated. I waited until they were gone before walking in. The security guard, the same one who'd watched me leave in tears 5 years ago, snapped to attention. Welcome back, Miss Carter. Thank you, Frank. I smiled. It's good to be home. The elevation ride to the executive floor felt different this time. No more anxiety, no more feeling like I didn't belong. This was my building now. In Mitchell's, my office, I set my laptop on the desk and looked out at the city. The same view but an entirely different perspective. Emma brought in the day's schedule. The transition team is ready. And HR needs your signature on the new organizational chart. I took the chart, looking at all the names. Some would stay, adapting to our way of doing things. Others would follow Mitchell and Daniel out the door. One more thing, Emma added with a slight smile. The building management wants to know if you'd like to change the name on the front of the building. I thought about it for a moment. The Anderson and Mitchell name had stood there for 70 years, a symbol of old money and older prejudices. Yes, I decided. It's time for something new. Later that day, I called an all-staff meeting. Hundreds of nervous faces looked up at me, wondering what would happen to their careers. Some of you knew me when I worked here, I began. Most of you have heard this story by now. But here's what you might not know. Success isn't about who gives you opportunities. It's about what you do with the ones you create for yourself. I looked out at the younger analysts, seeing my former self in their anxious expressions. Starting today, your work will speak for itself. Your ideas will be heard. Your talent will matter more than your connections. Those who can embrace this change will help build something extraordinary. Those who can't, well, I hear Anderson and Mitchell are starting a new firm across town. A ripple of nervous laughter. They said I'd never make it without their help, I continued. They were wrong. Now it's your turn to prove what you can do without old constraints holding you back. That evening, as the sun set over the city, I signed the final paperwork making the acquisition official. My signature, the one they never thought would matter, now determined the fate of everyone who had doubted me. Success, I've learned, isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others built. It's building something better in its place. The next morning, workers replaced the old building sign. The Anderson and Mitchell name came down letter by letter, making way for something new. Nova Industries. A new star rising. Me. I was exactly where I belonged. At the top of the building I'd earned, not the one they said I'd never have. Let them talk about how I'd never succeed without their help. Their words didn't matter anymore. My signature did. 6 months after the acquisition, I received an email from Daniel. He was looking for a job, having failed to find another firm willing to overlook his lack of actual skills. I've learned my lesson, he wrote. I understand what real merit means now. I forwarded his application to HR with a note. Entry-level positions only. Let's see if he really means it. Sometimes the best lessons come from having to earn what you thought you deserved. As for Mitchell, last I heard he'd retired to Florida, telling anyone who would listen about how he'd given me my start. But success tells its own story. And mine was just beginning.